Hello and welcome to today's roundtable discussion. Let me introduce you to the participants in today's roundtable discussion. You may know me, I am Larken Rose, and that's Amanda.
Yep.
That's all. However, we do have a round table
technically
between us, so it counts as a roundtable discussion, because we're going to discuss stuff next to a round table.
The tiniest round table you've ever seen at a round table discussion. Ever.
So, for this video, we're going to do something that we're going to do a bunch in future videos. Not everyone, but a lot of them. Which is we make the public version on YouTube, which is what most of you are watching right now. And then halfway through to complete it, we go to the Rose channel, and Rose channel subscribers get the rest of it. So you'll notice, if you're on YouTube, you'll notice that the video stops, and then we'll tell you can go to Rose channel if you want more. And if you don't, that's okay too. The theme today is that government wants you stuck in your feels. This is something I've talked about before on many an occasion, because government lives off of manipulating emotions, because you can't manipulate thoughts nearly as easily as you can use people's various emotions against them. And the first one is fear. Fear is the mind killer, as we all know. And I'm sure you're all well aware of how government constantly uses everything it can think of that you might be scared of to rile up your emotions. And it's an easily studyable fact that as our emotions get more riled up and active, our thinking brain and rationality kind of backs up, and sometimes just all the way goes to sleep. And then we could become emotional, stupid animals. But the weird thing is, even a bunch of pro-freedom people still seem susceptible to this, and they can still be manipulated with like, even if they can philosophically describe the principles, then something really scary, okay, yeah, I know the principles, but now something really scary is going to happen. So in this case,
case in point, the war happening and the stuff that's happening over in Ukraine, and the stuff happening with that happened with Palestinians and Israelites right now, and that stuff going on, and then also just the fact that government for the last, I want to say since the 70s, has been trying to sort of threaten or start some kind of World War III, and you can see the reaction in, the public, like the average person, to, like, the threat of World War III, and it's sort of only after you've existed on this rock long enough on planet Earth a while that you start to realize that the World War III that is being talked about is just a sensationalist propaganda campaign, and governments are absolutely starting mini wars in other places on the planet because they would love to drum up the fear of the threat of a full-on world war, and they would love to profit on that if it happens. But it seems to work to make a lot of people suddenly, like, immediately go away from principles about freedom to, like, well, I did want full freedom, but, in light of this war, well, I now need to go back into the political system, legitimize it, and, vote for a master, because this master will be, like, less evil than this other master and maybe help the war be less scary. And so it seems to still have the effect that the authoritarians want it to have sometimes, where it makes people think, okay, something scary, who are my politicians I need to vote for or empower to help defend me against this scary thing?
Yeah, and if you haven't noticed, both the Trump campaign and the Biden campaign, and they did this, Trump did it against Hillary, and they're both doing it against each other now, are openly saying if he gets elected, there'll be World War III. The Trumpites are saying that about Biden. The Biden supporters are saying that about Trump. This is not new, and to me, one of the most frustrating things is watching people who should know better seem to fall for it a little bit. Like, okay, well, if it really is going to be a war, then maybe we have to throw principles out the window and stuff. And this has been around forever, and that, like, I'm old enough, you're a whippersnapper, but I'm old enough to remember everybody being terrified of the Soviet Union. Oh my God, Russia's going to take over the world and invade us and stuff. Now, the Soviet Union was horrendously oppressive and evil. I'm not pretending. No, they were just like us. No, under Stalin and Lenin, and then the psychos that followed, like, who got less and less psycho, in some ways at least. But the whole thing of telling Americans, like, we're 1 inch away from this massively powerful Soviet Union taking over the world, that was never true. But it served the ruling class of the Soviet Union and the ruling class of the U.S. to have both of their populations scared shitless of the other one.
Yep.
So there was no political power whose interest would be served by saying, it's not really that much of a threat, they're not that capable, they're not that powerful. And then I joke about the fact that then one day they just like, Soviet Union just fell over. And the news today, like, what? So this big powerful thing, the most scary thing in the history of the world, just fell over? It wasn't even a revolution or a war, it just fell over. It's because it was a lie the whole time. And I don't mean it was a lie that the Soviet Union was evil and oppressive, because it totally was. It just was never an actual threat to Americans.
A lot of what government is banking on is they're banking on people's fear, making them imagine things that are horrible that might happen. So it's like playing out a movie of potential scary things in your head that will never happen. And the idea of war tends to make people who are in America now, a lot of Americans have never been through anything like a war, so it only makes them think of, like, the war movies they've seen and war propaganda stuff, and then they imagine, like, swaths of armies suddenly setting foot and a sudden bomb dropping, or, like, they imagine, that, like, waves and waves of, like, the average Russian citizen just hate us and can't wait to, like, come over and take over our country.
The UN is invading.
That's how stupid emotion will make somebody, like, become, because that's not really rational if you actually look at recent history. One thing that's a very great positive to point out is that as far as the number of millions and millions of people that died all in World War II, not a single war that's been happening since World War II has had nearly the death toll, because
all of them combined haven't even had the death
toll. And it's actually precisely because instant global mass communication through technology that has freed a lot of humanity has basically made it so that people can know what other people on the other side of the world think. So people are all traveling. Things are not as homogenous. People aren't just staying in the countries they're from. People are moving all over the place. And so now Americans and other people in other countries, we all have the benefit of knowing that the average citizen in this other country doesn't want us dead, and the average person in this country isn't trying to come over here to kill us all. And so because of that, there are a lot of us now realizing and figuring out that, it's all just the various ruling classes in these geographic areas all trying to start stuff with their own citizenry and get their own citizenry to go to war so they can profit. And that has made it so that, like, there's a whole segment of people that are trying to wake up other people that see this. But it's funny how even in between those two segments, there is still a group of people who says, okay, I get the principles, no more government, no more politics, I'm about freedom. And then they start seeing things on social media and seeing stuff about this is going to happen, and once again, you see how emotion drags them backwards. They just get scared at, like, is this real? Is government really going to try to start a World War III? Do I have to be worried? And it's like their brain goes backwards. And that's when you see people who normally you would think, wait, I thought you were, an anarchist or libertarian or voluntarist, suddenly being like, well, maybe, even though I don't really like politics, I gotta vote for Trump,
Because otherwise World War III.
Yeah, or because otherwise World War III is gonna happen, and it's like, but that's just your emotions talking. That's not reality. That's not likely, because reality has not shown that the governments have this power to make that come to pass anymore.
Yeah, but it's an effective slavesmith tactic because we're wired that way. We're living organisms. We're animals. Like, hopefully we're more than animals, but we're also animals, and wired into us is a thing that, like, that basically perceives, well, if there might be a threat, run away. Like, if you hang out in the woods and you go, look, a deer, and look at you and go, ah, and then sprint away. Like, well, I wasn't going to kill it, but it's probably alive because everything it sees of any significant size, it thinks, that might kill me, I'm going to run away. So there's a biological reason that the ones who run away from everything survive better. Trouble is, when we have a rational mind and that still kicks in, so people can go, well, what if COVID really is going to kill everybody? I better wear a mask, I better distance, I better get an injection, I better do all these things, not because I have the slightest evidentiary basis to think it's a threat or to think it even exists, like most people. Again, most people would never know, whatever you think of COVID, whether you think it's real or not or any of that, most people would never have known there was a pandemic, which there wasn't, if the media had never told them. It would have just been, oh yeah, there's pretty bad flu season this year. That's what people would know if they based it on their own experiences, but because they were told, there's this big scary thing, and with no evidentiary reason to think that, the normal biological response for people who don't know any better is, well, just in case there is, we better blah, blah, blah. We better, submit to authoritarian bullshit.
I'll point out that fear shut down a lot of people's thinking and then got them killed anyway, because a lot of people, instead of rationally, logically thinking, doing the research on, like, who are these people making these claims that I need to be afraid and therefore get this vaccine? What is this vaccine? What is it made out of? What's the history of the vaccine industry? Should I trust people asserting this is something that I should get? Instead of thinking and asking smart questions, a bunch of people went back in their minds and felt the feelings they'd felt seeing all the media and movies and series that were about viruses and zombie viruses and this virus taking over and plagues, because one of the most popular things in media is viruses taking over. And none of those movies, none of that stuff is actually how anything in virology works. But a lot of Americans only had that to go on. So they just hear there's a virus out there and they think it's as simple as I could catch a thing and die. And the fear of, and the thinking that maybe that's how that worked, the fear of maybe I might die, made them go mindlessly, not thinkingly, mindlessly, take an injection that got them killed. And I have watched through my social media network, because I had connections and my finger on the pulse with that data, as hundreds of thousands of people reported deaths and sudden diseases from the vaccine, and me and all of my unvaccinated friends were fine.
We're just doing fine.
So that should tell you how powerful fear is, because like he said, if everyone had just not paid attention to the television, not listen to the authoritarians, if everyone had done that, then also nobody would have known that there was some BS jab that was actually hurting and making people sick and killing them. They wouldn't have even gone and gotten it. And then it would have been like crickets to the medical associations trying to put out this vaccine. They would have gotten no response. And all those people, hundreds of thousands of people, would still be here and alive. And yet I watched them drop because they mindlessly got an injection, and they only got that injection because they gave into fear before they thought first.
And the evil bastards who profited off of that, both the political bastards who got power off of it and Big Pharma who got lots and lots of money, like tens of billions of dollars, they know the game and they know how it works. And from the beginning, I said, and then they did exactly this, they're telling lies they cannot get away with long term, so they're going to tell the lies, scare the shit out of people, get lots and lots of money, and then piece by piece go, oh, we were wrong about that. We were wrong about the distancing. Oh, the masks don't work. Oh, the vaccine doesn't stop this. Oh, it turns out it does have side effects, which they've done all of. So they start with the emotional fear so that in the moment everybody goes, well, just in case it's true. I better blah, blah, blah. Because they go from the analytical state of, I wonder if that's true, how can I find that out, to, what if it is? And then, like, they're not even trying to find out, they're just peeing themselves based on their imagination of what if this is true. And the psychos knew full well, when the fear wears off and we can start leaking the intellectual, like, analytical data out and go, oh, it turns out everything we said was wrong. We were just mistaken. We weren't lying our asses off. We were just mistaken. It doesn't matter anymore because they already got their effect. The most obvious short-term example of this phenomenon is most people, if you, like, you know, hide somewhere and put on a scary mask and jump out, and they go, like, it takes them a whole 1 second to figure out, oh, it's a person in a mask, probably somebody I know, too. But you can see the animal kick in before the intellect kicks in, and the animal response is, threat! Oh, no, it isn't. Never mind. And COVID and the warmongering and all the other, it's just a slower version of that. Scary thing, better do what they say. Oh, never mind, it wasn't anything. It's just a prolonged version of the exact same phenomenon.
Except they were constantly bombarding people, and I mean constantly. You all saw it with just, you know, you better do this. Oh, this is happening. Oh, someone died. It's because of COVID they died. And then there was, because people were busy being afraid and not thinking, they weren't noticing the things that me and my thinking friends and all of us who've been thinking and knew this was coming were noticing. Like, oh, there's a bunch of fraudulent death reports happening all over the place in hospitals. Oh, people in hospitals are exposing that they are being paid to put COVID on death certificates. That is absolutely a giant, obvious red flag if you have ever seen one, that something super sketchy's going on. But if people are too busy freaking out that there's a virus, and then they emotionally attach to their fear, they defend that fear, like, no, I'm right, I definitely have a reason to be scared, then they can't even hear people who are trying to reason with them to save their lives, because they actually know they're being manipulated. So it was really for people like me and like you who knew how government and the health system actually works. This wasn't surprising that this happened and that they tried to make it happen, but what was appalling was watching how many people just completely let fear have them by the balls, and they wouldn't think, including even people who some of us actually thought, oh, you've broken out of, you know, being like stuck in just your emotions and manipulated by government. Now you think with your brain and try to focus on what's rational. Nope. Some of those people that we thought maybe were more rational absolutely proved they were fully capable of losing their rationality when the government made them afraid enough. And that's one of the things that I think is so powerful for people to know. If something is trying to scare you, immediately be suspicious of it.
And the worst part about it for me, and I talked about this in videos, some of which got taken down, saying things that literally everybody is now acknowledging, they got taken down at the time, is that it wasn't just a matter of they had no data and there was just the risk. I was pointing out from the beginning, and getting censored for it, that even if you go by the data of the fearmongers, like if you can pause peeing your pants long enough to look at what they say, they were offering enough data to already know they were full of shit. Like I talked about the flattening the curve, and tried to point out to people, by their official explanation, we're scared of it going like this, which means a whole bunch of people get it and overwhelm our hospitals. Now, before anything happened, people could go, well, that might be a concern. Like if there really is a contagion and it's really going to do that. Okay, so we're going to do this, and we're just going to do this stuff 14 days to flatten the curve. Okay, I've explained this a million times. I'll do it short this time. The area under the curve is the same. which means they were saying the same number of people are going to get this. They were admitting they've never done anything to stop anything like this from spreading. The best they can hope for, which they can't even do this, is to slow it down. That's all they were even suggesting. So we're going to shut things down just so the same number of people get it over a slightly more drawn out period, like a couple of weeks instead of a day or something. That's what they were saying. After 2 weeks, when they said, we're going to keep it shut down, anybody with a logical brain, even if they fell for the crap to begin with, would have gone, wait, by your own testament, that's not going to do anything. You're not even pretending you're going to prevent people from being exposed to it, which has never happened in the history of any contagion ever. You're just saying we can do something about it after the fact when you get it, or slightly slow down the spread of it, which they didn't either. But when the facts were even there, being handed out by the fearmongers, and people still fell for the fear-mongering, it's so pathetic to watch. So, we're going to move on to fear-mongering in lots of other categories, and the next one up is immigration, because scary immigrants. But we're going to do that on the Rose channel.
Open borders are super scary.
Yeah,
aren't
scary
they, guys?
Mexicans. Oh my God,
scary.
Brown people. Brown people in our country. National borders. So, and that's not the only one by a long shot. But, yeah, if you want to hear the rest of this, you'll have to go to the Rose channel, because this shall end the YouTube version of the video. Yeehaw. And if you're still here, it's because you're on the Rose channel.
see us over at therosechannel.com/subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet.
Yeah, except by now they already are. We have crossed the line into Rose channeldom. That's a word.
I wanted to say that before you did the cutoff, but if you're deciding that was the cutoff.
I will. Now we have to do like time travel because we haven't decided where to edit the clip, so maybe I will. Time travel is scary.
I don't know.
Anyway.
I just wanted people to have the actual...
I know. Yeah, well, I put it on the screen too. I can do that sort of thing.